Sit up straight and tall. Start to feel more rather than less. Empty out on exhale. Let the lightness go in every direction on inhale. So exhale, you're feeling the container on exhale. And then you're filling the container on inhale. Doesn't matter if it's through your mouth or through your nose. Now I want you to try to feel, remember there's eyeballs, both looking inward to the midline and outward to empty space. So there's both inward vision and outward vision, and every cell has that capability. But I want you to feel the inner circumference of your rib cage. Let the inhalation expand it outward, directing things outward, while the inner side, inner edge, inner circumference of your rib cage is gazing inward towards the spine. What does it mean to gaze inward towards the spine? What the hell does that even mean? Make it true. Let there be more awareness. It's just language trying to help you feel something. There's more here. Soften the jaw, the inside of your mouth, but don't drop. Make sure you soften the organs of perception around the temples, jaw, inside of the mouth. You are actually at the same time rising and grounding and expanding. This is happening way deeper than your mind can process. Plug in. Add a little bit more asana. So even though I said it was a lie last week, very gently hit down with your sitting bones, but don't lose the stacking. Lift your chest up, broaden the space between your shoulder blades. Press down through your heels. Add asana. The only thing that can stabilize the mind, in my opinion, is the unchanging aspect of our experience. What if that's here too? Your ability to connect to that unchanging aspect of the whole, which is part of the whole, it's not the only thing. Then let that unchanging thing be mirrored in asana with your spine. Good, and then release. So what does it mean that there's an unchanging aspect of your experience? Right? So I'm going to teach some stuff like this. I know some of you can't put your hands together like this. So this is what I want to always encourage you is when you're seeing something that you can't physically do, find a way to not worry about your hands coming together like this, but figure out a way to maybe like do it in the center of your chest instead. Do it between the front and the back. Do it if even with the palms, even though the hands can't be spread, right? But so one of the things, find a place of connection. I'm using my hands as the mirror. I'm going to find a place of connection and attach my center to it. What? And by being graceful with the pressure, so it could be your elbows on the table. It doesn't have to be here. right? It's not about here. It's about the stability, the grounding. So if that means elbows, my elbows are on my desk too, right? So once I've got the stability, start to try to think, okay, how can I move the skin on my palms? When I do, so when I really don't just open the skin on my palms when my mind wants to, remember, I'm trying to get this to be my center. I'm going to open the skin on my palms and slightly drop my shoulder blades down. Right? So as this expands this way, something drops this way. Right? And I'm going to actually, and once I start doing that, I start to feel my sitting bones differently. Opportunity to see my feet differently, feel my feet differently. Now, as I have an outer reflection of the unchanging midline, an outer reflection of the unchanging midline, from there, I'm going to watch my breath. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. So this place we're trying to touch through asana never leaves you. You abandon it. You forget about it. Good, and then release. So, gosh, I think it was probably, how old am I? I'm 57. Probably when I was 24, I heard this guy, a good friend of mine, say this to me. He was a PhD French history student at Princeton. And he said something, he was in Paris one time, and on a Paris bathroom wall, he sees graffiti, right? I'm imagining written in French, but there's a picture of a moon, and there's a picture of a finger pointing at the moon, okay? And the line on the wall is something to the effect, human beings look at the finger and not the moon. Over and over again. I've never forgotten that, right? Like there's, so when I was saying, it's not about whether you can put your palms together and do it exactly the same way. That would be the finger. What's the experience? So I'm going to try to do the same thing I just did with here, with my elbows on the table. But it means what I have to figure out how to do is figure out how to get the subtle sensitivity of feeling the skin on my palms, even though I don't have that connection right now. So I'm going to figure out how am I going to, I'm getting sensitivity here, right? Okay, now I'm going to try to get, now if I collapse onto my elbows too fast, clearly my skin's not sensitive, right? So I got to figure out a way to keep the sensitivity, even though there's a duller weight on my elbows. And it's harder for me to mirror the lift in my chest and the center of my palms as integrated, right? So I've got a challenge here. So find your own solution and breathe. And you'll find that putting your hands together in prayer, if you can do it, is actually pretty smart. But it's not the only way. It's not the only finger. And this is why adaptive students, in my opinion, are better yogis. They're always having to find different ways and include their limitations as part of the realization, right? Good, and then release. So when you started trying to find a different way, did you go, am I doing this? Am I doing it right? Did you hear that voice come up in your head? Is this real? Is this that? Or may I try this way? Yeah, oh yeah, okay. Who's that voice for, by the way? All right. So more action, less inward stuff. You mean there's an unchanging part of this, and maybe that's why human beings developed religions and stuff, right? Divine associations, because maybe the divine can hold the unchanging, right? Then isn't it smart to say what's unchanging is grounded in love? What a freaking great idea that is, right? Maybe it's true, independently of us. I'm moving back and forth. Why? Because I want movement to come in, and I want to keep the back of my eyes and my bones feeling the unchanging even as I'm moving. So I'm expanding my awareness to try to stay focused on the unchanging and introduce the movement of asana, right? So I'm doing it again. We're doing that damn same old warm up, right? Like I ain't getting bored at a warm up, right? Because crap, there's no getting there. Have you noticed? Right? So I'm going back and I'm coming forward. When I have yoga teachers, I'm teaching next week, and when I have yoga teachers come and they think they're going to acquire knowledge from me, right? Like I'm going to show them techniques and stuff. And I laugh because if the field is infinite, which it is in yoga, right? There ain't getting nowhere. You're not getting farther down the road, right? So whether you can see the road and see what's on around the road, right? So we're, and then inhale and take one arm up, right? So we're just making a flow practice, right? And we're trying to make it more grounded. Like, how do you do this back and forth? And what do you do to maximize the sensation of grounding in base as you're moving? Now, if you know fatigue is hitting you too fast, like if you live across the pond, right? Don't worry about raising your arms or only raise them this far. Okay, so here's what I want. Damn it. I'm watching some of you trying to do things too hard. You're straining, right? So I want everyone to try to focus on this, right? I want you to try to move one arm up a little bit, but make sure it's grounded in the center of the chest and then down. Remember about the finger and the crap. I don't do it as good on this side, right? Yeah, I think it's because that shoulder hurts more. So I want the lift in my spine and the lift of my arm to start to get more deeply connected, right? And even if I don't lift my arm, so I got a student I teach at the Kurd Center for years, I'm going to do the same thing without lifting my arm. And I'm going to make sure I'm creating a directional expansion and including the center of my chest, right? And then I'm going to reintroduce the arm again, right? But it was never about the arm, for God's sakes, right? And so when you include the center of your chest, does anyone want to hit down with their sitting bones? Because I do, right? All of a sudden, and then I want to know where my feet are, for God's sakes, right? Like all of a sudden, the whole pose starts coming online, right? And then back to the unchanging. So I'm sitting, I'm leaning forward on my sitting bones. So as I go to the unchanging, I don't dissipate, right? You know a line I wrote in my notebook this weekend? The unchanging never sleeps. The hell does that even mean? Except it's true. But it's been co-opted. Evil never sleeps either. Darkness never sleeps. There's a threat right at the edges. That's the mind being scared of the unchanging, right? So I'm sitting on the front edge of my sitting bones, so my mind doesn't freak out. So I got a little bit of movement, and I'm going to let the whole room be here with me again. So my body's moving forward and back, but I'm moving in the whole room. right? So it's funny. Then I'm going to come back in the center. I'm going to feel the space between my shoulders and my ears, space behind my body, re-soften the inside of my mouth, and know that the sensation of emptiness dissolves my mind. And so the mind judges because it's scared. Hmm. Good. Take a couple breaths here. So the unchanging doesn't change even while your inhalation and exhalation come in and out of your body. So in these next couple breaths, let there be the stability of the unchanging tree trunk, which doesn't ever not change because it's actually swaying in the wind, but who cares, right? And so I know that there's an unchanging part through my midline, even as the inhalation and exhalation. So I'm going to amplify it again. I'm going to let the inhalation expand me in every direction. The exhalation move me towards my midline, dropping my shoulder blades into off my sitting bones and lifting up. And then I'm going to repeat it again. There's a constant interplay of moving away from and toward the midline. And that's in every freaking pose. Inhale, take your left arm up. Exhale, take it off to the side. Ground, find a way to be here. Right? I'm grabbing my knee. I'm not going to be in a rush. I'm going to make sure I'm keeping all the empty spaces in my pose. So I'm going to pause here for a second. And then trying not to disrupt anything as I revolve and squeeze my spine a little bit like a dish rag. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I'm going to try to keep the skin open on my whole back so I don't squeeze too hard. Mm-hmm. Good, and then release. So I had someone years and years ago say, well, you know, when you're twisting, you're like squeezing a dish rag. Have you ever noticed if you start with a dish rag that's already scrunched up and you try to squeeze it, only some of the water comes out? But if you fluff the wet dish rag and then squeeze it, more water comes out? Probably the same thing's true with your spine, right? So hit down, rise up, make the dish rag have more space in it, shift gravity, try to keep this midline open, right? Get grounded again. Let the inhalation, let there be more space in the dish rag. Exhale and revolve. I know I want to keep in my back hip. And I still want to expand the dish rag, make space in the fibers of the cloth. So when I squeeze it, more releases. Good, and then come on back to center. Start the rhythm again. Right? So one of the things that I struggle with even, and I go through, does anyone notice this weekend if you're around family that somebody probably said something that kind of like hurt your feelings or bugged you? Did that probably happen once, even if it's so little, no, you never even noticed, right? So sit up straight and tall. So, you know, one thing, if you do a lot of twisting, like if you're to twist for 20 straight minutes pretty actively, you'd get a weird kind of heat, right? You should try this sometime if you ever want to. And if you keep going back and forth, you'll get a weird kind of heat, a weird kind of sweat. It's kind of a sweat. And then you'll also like smell if you ate a lot of garlic. Like it'll literally come out of you. So certain foods will come, you'll like feel it, right? Especially if you had a lot of garlic, right? But what if the same is true mentally with a twist? How do you let go of content? Right? Like the places you didn't even know filled up, right? So sit in the part that's unchanging. So I'm sitting in a tension in that part because I want to utilize the unchanging as part of my pose. So I'm sitting here. I'm letting the empty spaces be here, where things probably stuck to me that I didn't know. Don't even have to know what the things are. But I'm going to cleanse this space with my next twist. So in order to do that, being more connected to the whole room and not just an immediate feedback loop, staying grounded in your feet and sitting bones, keeping your chest lifted and letting all the space in. Right. So I'm going to like take a couple and let there be an unchanging part. And I'm going to inhale again. Take my arm up, exhale, make it graceful, trying not to disturb the stillness, right? I'm going to get and as I start to move my spine, I'm going to let more of me get cleansed. So it's not about how far you get in the spine. The harder you twist, probably the less mental cleansing that occurs, right? There's a point where you need to work, but then there's a point where you need to know work has diminishing returns, effort does. So the work is in the stillness, the lift under the collarbones, the drop of the shoulder blades, the feeling of the sitting bones, the feeling of the heels. That's the work. Effort is different. Effort's the crank. Crank doesn't help cleanse. Good, and then release. Cranking effort doesn't help cleansing, or at least has diminishing returns. Up. All the spaces. Revolve. Ground, because I go off balance as soon as I do it. So you can see me trying to come into that softness before the effort. That's a feedback loop I want to keep. I'm going to find my structure so the empty spaces get more meaningful. And then I'm going to let things squeeze. As I turn my spine, I'm activating the empty spaces, pushing stuff out of them. So the squeezing spine and the pressure at the spine is to release through the empty spaces of the body. Good, and then release. Come forward. Come back. I'm trying to find the space again through rhythm because I just squeezed it pretty hard, right? Then I'm going to come back and get into symmetry. And I'm going to reconnect to what's unchanging. Just so you know, the unchanging is not an idea. It's a fact. It's part of your experience. It's whether my spine and my body can become congruent with it while I'm efforting. So sometimes what I like to do is make sure I send depth charges through the emptiness, right? So as I'm sitting here and trying to like be in symmetry and feel the stuff, right? I'm going to put my hands on my knees or my wrists or whatever. And I'm going to get in that really quiet, unchanging part that the mind begins to a little bit freak out in. Then I'm going to hit on my own knees quick. Then I'm going to let go. So I'm sending a ping through the spaces. And it's going to lift my chest. So the lift in my chest is part of the ping. Then I'm going to fall back through gravity and then go like, okay. you don't have to collapse in order to find the unchanging. In fact, the unchanging might bring you to attention. All right, so then take your legs wide. So we're going to do a whole bunch of, don't twist too far. If it, I think I'm going to want to do a whole series of twists, right? We'll see. But I want to be in more space now, so I'm spreading my knees. I can tell because of my scoliosis, this space right here, this part of my rib cage, by the way, which I have a lot of pain in, right, is actually languishing and letting energy spill this way. And I can't quite help it because that's my scoliosis, right? So as I sit here, I know that in order for not to have energy dissipate this way, I'm going to need more presence over here. Now, I don't know what the analogous story is in your sitting with your legs wide. There's a place where you're leaking and things are pooling, right? But I'm going to find the place that I know needs to go towards the midline because it's falling out of the midline, right? And so I'm just going to put a little pressure there. Maybe it's one of your knees. Maybe it's one of your legs. I don't know. Figure it out, right? And so I'm going to sit here and keep this energy nourishing my midline as opposed to falling into empty space, right? I can already tell I'm going to, because I wish I had 4 arms right now. Right now, I'm going to take this and press down through my legs, especially this leg. So I'm trying to make a connection, right? So it might be over your pay grade to know where you're leaking. So let's just go back and forth, right? Gonna do this, right? And then I'm gonna touch my legs. I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna touch my legs, right? I'm gonna do this. And by the way, this is a really good place to get more supple. Anyone remember why? Because the intersection of the subtle body and the physiological body occurs at the diaphragm. In other words, the intercostal muscles along your rib cage really matter. So I'm going back and forth. I'm gonna make this a pose for God's sakes. I'm gonna go back and forth, right? I'm gonna start activating, rolling this shoulder back. And as I do, hitting down through my sitting bones, freaking making a pose right here, right? I'm gonna go back and forth. It's not perfect, right? I don't care. I'm just trying to get my rib cage connected to my legs, connected to my arms, right? And then I'm going to sit in the center again. I can tell what I was doing that. I was compressing in my low back. So I'm going to bring my legs back together and I'm going to lift up. Let myself hang there. You mean this part of the spine right there really matters? Yep. Gonna go back wide again. I'm gonna get a quicker feedback loop by pushing on my leg. Right? Once it gets physical, the mind gets to be dull. Right? Once it's overtly physical, the mind dulls. That's why asana is so great, man. The mind gets to be dull. Back and forth a little bit. You mean the yoga practice is about the spine? Yeah, it's true. That was a kiss moment for me. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't forget it's about your spine, right? So I'm going back and forth, making grounding and expansion because I know twisting is going to be hard, right? I know it's going to be hard to stay grounded and expanded while I'm rotating. So I'm preparing the space and the expansion and the grounding. And I'm going to sit in the middle here. Once I go back on the back edge of my sitting bones, the space collapses, so I'm going to come forward, migrate my spine forward into my body, catch it with the front tips of my shoulders, drop the skin down my back body, hit down through my sitting bones and lift my chest up. I'm going to make this a pose. Good, and then release. I'm going to bring my legs back together. I'm going to touch up the way like a little kid comes to touch his mom when he's trying to run around a store that he doesn't know where all the strangers are, right? So I'm going to put my hands on my knees. I'm going to sit in the midline. I love when you see a little kid doing bigger and bigger circles of expansion, then coming back to the center and then running out again. Yeah, that's wisdom. So I'm doing it in my own yoga practice. So I'm staying in the midline here. All right, inhale up. Over, back. I'm grabbing, I'm getting better leverage because I want this to be more active. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I'm really going farther into the physical twist now. I'm moving, right? But I'm letting the inner circumference of my rib cage look at the center of my spine, hitting down through my sitting bones, stacking the spaces between my sitting bones and my spine, right? Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I'm going to try to complete the pose by opening the skin across the chest, dropping the shoulder blades in and down, rising up while pushing through my feet and sitting bones. More active, and then release. Back to center. And it took my breath away. Must have been grinding a little bit hard that time. Inhale up. Exhale, revolve. I'm grabbing my knee because I want more leverage on this one, right? I know I've got a tendency to leak here, so I'm going to touch right here. Show me where my midline is, right? Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Shoulder blades down, spine up, sitting bones down, heels down. Going a little bit more physical. Lift under the collarbones. Good, and then release. Be in the center. Lift up for a second. Right back, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Take the arm behind you. I'm not grabbing quite so hard this time. I'm trying to get it more open here, so I'm turning my palm up and using the back of my arm against my leg. Different twist. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Ooh, I got some sore spots in my shoulder as I try to crank this twist. Oh, I want the center of my chest to touch the sky as the earth stays underneath me, right? Okay, gonna figure that out. Good, and then release. Other side. Good, and then come on back to center. So sit in the center. I'm imagining a couple of you, maybe Jane, I'm not sure who else has lived in California. Has anyone put your thumbs up if you've ever been in an earthquake? Right? They're wild, okay? And you get dizzy because you don't realize. One of the things I learned in the 2 earthquakes I was in California, Northridge one and the one in San Francisco for the World Series, right? I wasn't in those places, but is that I didn't realize how much I'm dependent on the Earth's stability until it moves. And then you, like your whole orientation and configure, you get nauseous because your whole configure, something you were depending on that you didn't even know for it to be unchanging actually changes. And it's like your whole orientation of your nervous system goes, right? So when you're looking for the unchanging, try to recreate the earth. That's why I'm grabbing on my knees. I'm trying to get it grounded. Then I'm trying to drop and trust that the floor or the earth right? So when you live in a chair, getting out on the floor is like a prison break. Partly that's because you're connected to what's less changing, right? And so you're trying to find that sensation. I'm okay with the empty space in the room if I know where the unchanging is, right? My mind doesn't have to worry. Good. And then inhale up. Exhale again. This time we're going to come farther forward. So I'm going to come down even onto my table, right? Could be under your leg farther. I'll just come down to my leg. So I'm coming forward, right? So if I have to be careful not to have my foot pedal slip, my foot slip and go down, right? But I'm more farther forward. So now my twist, and find in some ways gets more fun, right? Because I'm forward, there's a challenge, right? I get to feel the power of the turn, right? The power of my spine, right? So because I'm forward, because I got a different relationship to the earth, the rise has more dimension, right? And it's because I'm forward, because I'm falling, that the rise actually gets more intense. Damn, I like that. That's a good feedback loop. I'm grabbing my leg around, I'm grabbing my hand. I should show you all the things I can show you all the ways I cheat to get this, right? So I was coming forward, but I was grabbing behind, put my thumb behind my knee, right? The fingers over my shin because I want my bones in the pose. I'm cheating all the time, right? And then I get to be dynamic. I get to pull, push, lift. So I'm pulling on my feet, my thumb's behind my knee. I'm pulling on my shin. I'm pushing down on my elbow to my femur bone. I'm using my own bones to feel dynamic. But instead of pushing off my bones, which would be how the mind would do it, I'm going to make sure my bones stay part of the earth. I'm going to watch the down strength of my bones. And I'm going to ground it. And then I'm going to turn my spine. Oh my God, anyone feel your abdomen come in? A whole bunch of things start to change, right? And then I'm going to turn my head. Oh, I like it, but it's fatiguing me pretty fast. Good. And then release. Come out of it. Whew. Now my setup won't be the same on this other way because I don't twist as well this way. I don't know if you know that if you have asymmetries in your body like that. So I'm going to go over this way, grab behind my knee again, or change it because I don't want to get caught on the fingers. I want to be looking on the moon, right? So I'm grabbing it. You can tell my earth energy here isn't as strong, right? That's okay. Right? I'm less grounded. I'm less heavy on my left, right? And I tend to curve my back. So I'm going to try to lengthen my spine here. So before I get dynamic with the twist, I can tell this side, I need to lengthen my spine more. So I'm going to work on lengthening. So I'm rocking back and forth a little bit. So I propel myself into my spine because this is where I need some propelling. And then I'm going to start to crank. So when I'm cranking, after I made the space from propelling, right, then I crank only after I've made spaces in the dish rag. Good, and then come on back together, back to center. So maybe it's just me and my scoliosis, but did anyone find one way of twisting more satisfying than the other? Thumbs up if you found that. Means you need to twist on the unsatisfying side more. But don't only twist there. I like that people are taking water, right? Because that means you're actually moving your autonomic nervous system. It's good. I'm thirsty too. And again, damn it. So here's a little secret. Well, I don't know if it's a secret. Somebody said this in my presence one time. Twists help grief. Huh? What the hell, huh? I wonder why. I wonder what spaces they're cleansing. I wonder what spaces they're moving. I wonder what's stuck in those static spaces. Huh. Now, could grieving people twist a whole bunch and never get better? Absolutely. Right? You have to know that you're releasing. Inhale, lift up. We're going to go back to the simple twist, right? The one that's not so forward. Hopefully it feels more free now, right? Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. You grind it through the last one to make this one lighter. Lengthen the spine, twist gracefully farther into the twist, right? You prepared for that, right? And then back, and then up this way, right? And then this way, and then again, get farther into the twist with less effort because you've tilled the soil. Where do we hold stuff? It's not just our minds. Good, and then release. Back to center. So now I'm going to do the more forward one, but I'm going to do it with not so much cranking, right? Oh, oh, and I'm going to actually, I don't know, I kind of want to jump like a Mexican jumping bean, right? I'm going to make sure my shoulder blades secure the pose. I'm going to turn. I'm going to like it because this gives me more of a feedback loop for my ego, right? So I'm going to like open and expand. And I'm going to revolve and I'm going to, that last little bit of water in that dish rag, I'm going for it, right? I'm trying to balance my hand strength and twisting the rag with the idea that I know if I grip too hard, I'm stopping it in the fiber. So I'm trying to figure out what's the ratio of effort to surrender that gets me most success, where I wonder how to define success. Good, and then release. Ooh. Ooh, boy. Shoulder just snapped. Might have been cranking that one a little hard. It was fun though. I think I'm going to do it again. I'm going to come forward. I'm going to grab. I'm going to grab, right? Open it up even more by putting my handle on the back of my chair. So I'm getting a little bit more open. Making it more dynamic. I can tell that I'm pushing a little hard. I'm beginning to shake a little bit. So I got to watch my nervous system. Got to know where it turns into violence. And I need to back off of violence. Good, and come on back to center. Have you figured out the subtlety of violence and nonviolence? Right, going back and forth again. Open it up. Right. Coming forward, forearms against my thighs. I'm gonna ground here for a second. Get my sitting bones down, ground my shoulder blades, and lift the center of my chest up. Not hard, and then release. Then my whole spine from my tailbone through my chest to my mouth opens up. And then I release. and my spine starts to carry waves. Right, here comes one way, and then there it goes away. The going away is important as the activation. Again, we're not winning anything here. We're just trying to have earth and activation. Now a real gentle twist, right? So I'm getting myself ready, right? And I'm not going to take my arm up. I'm just going to bring it across. I'm going to let my insides come out by grounding towards the earth. And then instead of squeezing my muscles, I'm going to think about moving and twisting the spaces in my chest over to the right, this way. So I'm not doing it from my muscles. I'm doing it more from the spaces. Of course, your jaw is going to have to be soft. Of course, your eyes are going to have to be a little sleepy. The spaces take suppleness. Good. You have to be, come back saying, you have to be really careful with your effort when you're trying to bring all the spaces with you. And go the other way. Again, instead of leading from the grounding sitting bones in the down energy, I'm trying to move the spaces. So for me, if I think about the spaces and connect it to my skin, then I get suppler. Good. And then back to center. So the thing, and then practice some symmetry, each foot, each hip, each shoulder, each elbow, each wrist. I do recommend sometime that you just twist like continuously for like 15 minutes. But don't get sloppy. That's the thing about moving fast. Don't get too sloppy. You're going to get sloppy. It's hard to keep that level of focus. So I'm sitting here finding where I'm holding stuff. Find it in your own body. Find what parts you have to let go of in order to have a good shavasana. Where are the grips? Smile at the places you're gripping. That'd be you trying too hard. And then set yourself up for shavasana. For me, I want to tip back a little bit. I want to be held up. I want to let myself plummet lightly. So it means I keep the skin on the face soft and the jaw and the inside of the mouth. That makes sure as I plummet lightly. I want to let the chair hold me up. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. Close them. And then open them again. So I tend to think about like something like being grateful or thankfulness as adding a slight drop of color to the water, of dye to the water, right? And when I do that, not for anything in particular, just like things just feel a little bit better, right? It's a pretty great human innovation, gratitude. And it doesn't have to be before anything except everything. That's the great thing about gratitude. You can be grateful for everything. The whole, not like all the bad things and the good things. I mean, the whole everything, right? The whole everything. And that sensation comes for me better through my spine than it does through my head. My head receives gratitude. If I try to go from head to gratitude, it's less organic. Right? Remember the sensations we're driving towards. Like, remember the moon, not how you get there. Right? So